This is Festival Past Stories, a podcast series is told by the people who create and make festivals come to life. You will go behind the stage, kitchen, or studio door to hear the stories of passion and inspiration that started some of the world's most beloved festivals. Hear the startup stories and how an idea went from what if to what's next. All right, friends, this is Festival Past Stories, a podcast told by the people who make and create festivals and make those great moments that you love come to life. We'll take you behind the stage, the kitchen, or the studio door to hear those stories of passion and inspiration for some of the world's most beloved festivals. And every festival has a story, and every festival has a professional produce those festivals behind the scene. And today, we're going to talk to somebody who can tell you a few fantastic stories about working with talent and producing events, especially where he is right now in, let's call it the music capital of America, because I think it is right now, in Austin, Texas. Please welcome the managing director and founder of A Player Media. It's Martin Martinez. Martin, I'm going to start with a very loaded question in the year 2020, and then I have a follow-up for it. Are you ready for it? How are you?
Ooh, that is a loaded question. I'm glad you asked too, because I'm repping my friends at the Hi, How Are You project right now. And that's something that we really, really care about. We always have, mental well-being for ourselves, for our loved ones, and for everybody that's in the creative community. So to answer your question, we're hanging in there. I think we're doing all right. Certainly some days are better than others. So far it's starting to kind of get better, even more so now that we've settled. And we're adapting to kind of what this new normal is.
Yes. There's new normal. If we're going to play quarantine bingo, I got you down as new normal. If you say pivot, I'm going to have to send you a prize, I think.
Yeah. But the middle square is now more than ever.
the path forward for extra credit, I think.
That's the bonus one. Everybody gets now more than ever.
I like it. So speaking of the Hi, How Are You? Hi, How Are You is a day, January 22nd, where you guys celebrate music and art and highlight mental health issues. And what a great time to just check in on some people. And since the pandemic looks like it's going to be here for quite a while, let's hear more about Hi, How Are You? The day, and how people could find out more about that one.
Yeah, honestly, shout out to my friends who started that and the artist who drove that, Daniel Johnston. Fortunately, he passed away around a little less than a year ago. Oh. But, his work, just the art, like right here with Jeremiah the Friendly Frog, that's an iconic mural in Austin, Texas. It really was driving a lot of discussions around mental health, depression, and all the things that can drag a person down way before it was something in vogue. But honestly, it should have been discussed for a very long time. And his manager, Tom Gimbel, who's also the general manager of Austin City Limits, a TV show, has been a tremendous voice in spreading what Daniel can do, or Daniel's message, his art and his music. Really, now that I think about it, the very last concert that we got to do this year before everything kind of turned for the worst was our Hi, How Are You Day.
Yeah. Tons
of artists came in from around the country, the world, to play covers of Daniel's work, and then closed out with a massive, incredible set by Cage the Elephant, and where even the lead singer did a couple covers of Daniel's work. Very emotional time too, but had we had known that was the last time we were going to have a couple thousand people all in the same space, I think we would have loved it just that much more, even though it was such a magical night. So Tom, if you're there, somewhere out there, send love, we're repping, and we're always spreading that mission of Daniel's. So hopefully, maybe by next year, by January, we might be able to get back into ACO Live and do it again. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed indeed. That's got to be one of those quarantine bingo spots as well.
There it is. It is. And if people do want to learn more about Hi, How Are You Project, just head on over to hihowareYouProject.org.
Okay. It's depressing when you start going through Instagram and seeing companies like yours and companies like mine that were involved in live events. Very little has been posted to the content since January 22nd. And I saw that Hi, How Are You was your last live update on Instagram.
We had so many things that we wanted to start promoting leading into the big show, which is South by, 6 weeks later. With a lot of me and my colleagues in the space for South by. It's a year-round operation. And so we start talking about it like right now. We ideate over the spring or the late spring into the summer about what we should be working on, but right around the July, August time where we really start digging in and get our planning in. And at the moment, it's just we still don't know. Well, a lot of this experience for, our company, my team, and, colleagues and friends in the space is, what can we do to keep ourselves occupied if we are still committed to being events people? If this is something that we want to do. Some people are just hanging it up. Maybe they're going back to school or just trying to figure out maybe what the next chapter in their career path is going to be. But for me and a lot of people around me, it's, we're digging in. And now I'm talking to you live from the comfort of my bedroom studio.
Yeah.
I can't see it, but I have I just got a ton of soundproofing. We're ready. We're ready to host large scale things. And we're working on some large scale things that are all going to be done virtually through the end of the year now. And that's exciting, but nothing's ever going to really compare to the in real person experience. Though when we get there, I have a feeling, there is going to be this hybrid experience that isn't going to leave for anything. We're going to get a larger audience, not just the people that are committed to showing up again and taking all the precautions to be safe in person, but there's still always going to be, thousands of potential people, attendees that are just going to want to dial in and experience that from the comfort of their own homes. So that's something that we're looking at.
I agree with that 100%. And I've been saying the same thing to my clients in the nonprofit world. I said, look, even if we have a vaccine tomorrow, and I know yesterday AstraZeneca and a couple of these other companies that aren't sponsors of this show, so I shouldn't give them a shout out, but we've been hearing that they're working together and there's very good human trials that are happening with the vaccine.
Right.
But even if that happens, there's still 20% of the population that won't take the vaccine for a lot of reasons. Some people are anti-vax. Some people are they're like, I want to see how this works for 6 months before I don't care about what the trials say. I want to see people I know take the vaccine and see if they get any side effects. Some people might be having, if someone's pregnant, they probably don't want to take the vaccine right now. There's a lot of precautions. I am not pregnant. I don't think you can humanly be a lot of things happening at AstraZeneca and other science labs, but I don't think that's happening. So I think I'm safe to say that you and I personally are not having children right now, but I'd take the vaccine if it was ready tomorrow. If they said it's safe for humans, I would take it. But there are going to be people that are still going to say, I'm staying home for the rest of the year or for the next 6 months, or if I don't really have to go to that event, I'm just not going to go. So, but I enjoy it and I support the mission of, getting this music out there or promoting great independent artists. So I think there's always going to be that live streaming element where people are going to, and the technology is going to be so much better in 6 months and a year, because people haven't really, they've been concentrating on it a little bit, but South by and other big festivals, and I've spoken to a few people from the festival, so now I know that the cool people, the people in the know, call it South by, like yourself. Yeah, so I hope I've been ingratiated to that I can call it South by.
You're in the fam now, man.
Yes, I appreciate it. I feel so cool. And I'll come down to Austin. I'll shave everything but the mustache. I'll leave the mustache. I have a nice big Texas mustache for.
We've all been developing our quarantine beards. I actually trimmed down just for this today.
Thank you. I'm flattered. Wow, people are now doing hygiene for the Festival Past Stories podcast. I appreciate it. I may or may have not showered today. You never know.
Such is the life. What day is it again? Who knows?
Blur's day. It is.
It is.
So, let's say it's at a festival or a small music venue that could have 1,000 people, but now they can only have 300. So they can sell the 300 tickets via a lottery system or something like that. And then the other people, in fact, a larger audience outside of that 1,000 would want to be able to live stream it. And they can monetize that with your friend's software, the software. He's not a sponsor either, I get it, but we'll give him a little plug as their software is in beta. Yeah. But the type of broadcasting softwares, and so many that are out there right now, are going to come up with ways to monetize this. And it's going to be somebody from within the room, maybe standing on a red carpet or something, saying, Live from Austin City Limits, it is XYZ band, and here they are. And maybe they're even interviewing one of the band members before they go on. And that's not even an experience that the people in the room are going to get. Like, that's kind of intimate for the people at home live before that band goes on. You're going to get a little behind the scene interview. And you could have that streamed out to thousands and thousands of people. So
absolutely.
Who knows? Yeah. I know the venues that we've spoken to are hurting. They can't repurpose their venue for school, for virtual learning or distance learning, or like some venues can do. If you have a wedding venue, you could probably do that. You could turn it into a classroom. But if you got a music venue, that's been beat up pretty bad over the years from bands and people dancing and jumping around and everything, and beer being spilt everywhere, you're not going to be able to have like a classroom type environment. You can't do that.
Well, many of these spaces too, they haven't been renovated, or installing a lot of the things, a lot of the gear, a lot of the infrastructure you need for kind of video production and broadcasting. So I definitely anticipate the venues that can make it through this are going to, if they're not already, investing a lot in that infrastructure, because if hybrid events are here to stay, you want some turnkey packages and offerings that, if you are bringing in a larger scale client to put on an intimate, if you were a venue of 1,000, you can only bring in 300, 250 people now. And if anything, it makes you more attractive as a venue, if, prospective, clients or organizers are looking at bringing back, the live event with a hybrid layer versus outsourcing it to a production company, which many of, the local production companies that we work with have been looking into. And it's something that we've already had in our product offerings. We've had live streams for all of our events for the last 18 months, once we really started digging into it. So once COVID happened, it was a matter of kind of looking at our gear, seeing what we could repurpose, and just trying to build on top of that, while simultaneously teaching us on how to become broadcasters. I think that's another thing that many people are starting to realize is, having a Zoom, or a webcam and knowing how to run Zoom is one thing, but to actually create something engaging like a TV show.
Yes.
And knowing, what are the mechanics of actually being an engaging host, organizer, or however, is critical. So there's all these new skills that are coming out that normally were just behind the scenes for television and that kind of video production. And now, event organizers are having to learn a lot of this. They don't really have the bandwidth to outsource it, so they have to teach themselves as well as the teams. But I'm also seeing that out of the artists. The artists are doing a really good job. The ones that are, biting the bullet and becoming more tech savvy.
Yes.
Now they're great at audio, but now they have to understand video more. Now they have to understand online broadcasting tools.
Sure.
So I can't tell you how many tools I've already been experimenting with on top of this new one that I'm using right now. And
the new normal.
It's part of the new normal. A lot of education. So I think that's what's happening too for people that are still wanting to be a part of this industry, that are looking around the corner on where we're going to be headed. Learning right now is the most critical. Experimenting is the most critical. We spent most of March feeling sorry for ourselves. With the day South by was canceled. I think it's almost like 9/11. We all know, if we're in the industry working on something for South by, we all know where we were when we heard the news. And it was Friday, March 6th at 3:00 in the afternoon when we all heard it. Mm-hmm. I know where I was, and I know, and any of my colleagues I ever talked to, they all know where they were. And rest of that month was kind of a fog, to be honest, at least for me. There were certainly some people, friends, partners, organizers that were just trying to figure out what they could cobble together at the last minute for an in-person event. Now that the official titles were gone, we haven't gone into full lockdown mode. That wouldn't happen for maybe another 6 days or so, once all of the national sporting events were canceled very quickly. In a matter of 5-6 days, that following week of March, the rest of the country kind of found out that this is something that's serious. That week was just, again, very much of a fog, a fugue, to be a little bit more precise. But by that end of the month, it was just, all right, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if we can still do this anymore. Maybe we should look at other career paths, if there's going to be a career path after this. But, and then April was a lot of just community building, activating some of the people in our community, engaging them, as well as connecting with other organizers. One thing that I've found that is very inspiring, I guess, is something that's been a good silver lining throughout this whole process, is because all like organizers, festivals, events, concerts, all those organizers are also not doing anything right now. We're connecting and collaborating. I'm a part of several different Slack communities that are just strictly for event organizers. And I kid you not, I have talked to more event producers over the last 3.5 months, 4 months than I ever really have in my career, because we're always in the weeds. We're always traveling somewhere where, we don't have time to talk to you at our events. I don't have time to really talk to you at my event either. To see all of us just kind of sitting there collaborating, sharing tools, sharing with each other the newest tool, talking about troubleshooting things and all that fun stuff on what's working, what isn't working, and having that kind of collaboration level. That's been fun. That's been great. We're all in this together. That's another one on bingo.
There it is, Martin. You are one unprecedented away from winning this bingo round.
We'll get there.
But you mentioned best practices, of course. This is what people are doing, and it's been really great to see the positive sides of this, as you touched on there. People helping each other and not saying, okay, now I'm going to send you an invoice for consulting for 6 hours. It's like, whoa, that's not happening.
Absolutely.
And then when you are booking a virtual gig or something, everybody's had to take a bit of a haircut on their fees in a time where nobody could get an actual haircut, right? So, which was difficult, but we did. And I hope that people going forward will remember these times and say, remember how Pat worked with us during that time and spent all that time going through these platforms as we were all learning how to produce live television from our bedrooms every day. Pat was there to really lead us along the way and share all of his information. And then when we did book him for an event, he gave us a very fair price. So let's hire him again next year. But on the other side of what you're saying, I also see people that are like, I don't think that, I don't see any reason. I'm not going to do an event unless they pay me my normal fee. And I'm like, well, you really need to be flexible right now because everybody has to be. Yeah. And then some people saying, I've actually had people say, I think I'm just going to take a sabbatical for a year. Like, if you can afford to take a sabbatical and just hide in a cabin somewhere, good for you. But not me. Hey, and if you want to send your clients my way, I'm happy to talk to them. I got lots of best practices I can share with them.
Yeah, I'll take them. Take them right off your hands. It's fine. And that's kind of where we're at right now. I mean, there's a few conferences we're looking at producing in the next few months that, right now it's just about kind of breaking down what's working. What are we seeing that works? And experimenting on top of that, knowing that the tools are just going to get better. They're all going to get much better as we continue on through this slog. So just scaling up to that, knowing that the tools will get better, that things like this will continue to improve that I'm using, but also the reliability, the fidelity of tools like Zoom that everyone's already now. I don't know how, the half of the world did not know what Zoom was, and now that half does, and now they're all using it. Whereas you don't really have to tell people like how to rename themselves or how to unmute and unmute or turn or switch their cameras. Right. People now know that. That's a status quo thing. So who's to say what else will they know in 3 months, 6 months? So that's what we're hoping to reach to. Again, we're skating to where we think the puck's going. Yeah. For at least the more savvy organizers that I've been able to work with throughout all this. The other ones, some of the more big box, the CMPs, those that have just too much fixed costs. I've seen a lot of them start liquidating a lot of their inventory, their gear. Others are just trying to figure out, because they don't have the right teams in place, not the technically savvy ones, more of just the in real life, really kind of hyper organized kind of events people. They're kind of struggling because they have their budgets and their staffs are too bloated. Right. And that's been tough. We've always been pretty lean at APM. We take the initiative. If something needs to be done, we go do it, because seconds matter in the events world, and proximity matters in the events world. So being nimble, being able to improvise, and having still grace when we all know our hair is on fire and we're stressed out, still not looking like it, is critical to ensure that the attendees don't notice that and feel that, and maintaining that control. You can still do that in a Zoom. It's just a matter of engaging that audience as soon as they walk into that Zoom room and kind of holding their hands all the way through.
I'm going to steal a little bit from your website to get into how your company came about, because you say that you work with influential brands and talented creatives to build compelling brand stories. We love stories on Festival Pass Stories. Produce exceptional events and capture those so your organization can stand a mile above the rest. So how did A Player Media come about 3 years ago?
That's a good question, Pat. So I'm a serial entrepreneur. I think I've always been an events person. I think I have been. I was always a very good host when I was growing up. My parents always encouraged me throwing like really nice birthday parties growing up. My friends always tell me about that. But I didn't really think of it. I didn't really think much of it. I just enjoyed entertaining people that I knew cared about me and I cared about. So from the pizza parties when I was like 13 to, hosting, little underground parties in high school to in college, that was just always a part. But I've always also seen trends. And I didn't really come from a particularly privileged background. And I wasn't really a big early adopter on technology yet, just because we couldn't afford them. So by the time of college rolled around, I got onto Facebook. You could only have, it was 2005. I know I'm dating myself, but you only regulate only for college kids at the time. I had a big clunky desktop PC that I started my account on, and just was kind of fascinated by it for the first couple of years. I started working in bars once I became of age, a little bit before I became of age. Don't tell anybody that. But
we will make sure the authorities in Austin.
Yeah, I guess all right. And I'm way too old now, so I guess statute of limitations. But I started a social media marketing agency while I was in college.
Oh, wow.
I was already working in bars and restaurants, and those are my first clients. My first South by was also my first day on the job in a bar back in 2007.
Okay.
So I got a taste. I didn't know what South by was.
You were still calling it South by Southwest, the full name at that point.
Yeah, the South by Southwest. And I was just, I didn't even know what that was. I still didn't know what that was. But I was like, that's weird. Is it that Alfred Hitchcock movie? I like movies, so I thought it was something to do with like Alfred Hitchcock, North by Northwest. That also fascinated me, just crowds of people. And this was a different time. That same year, Twitter launched. So technology wasn't at the forefront. The digital, interactive, as they call it, didn't exist really at that time. But that same year, like Twitter won their Webby Awards, and now Twitter's what it is. But it was really all music. Like one of my first real like major encounters with anything that was like, wow, this is something to really experience was I met Amy Winehouse. Like that, I got to see her perform. And the funny part of the story is that I had no idea who she was. Like I had no idea who anybody was. I was just a kid. I was just like a deer in headlights, running around hauling ice and cutting limes and dragging out the trash. That's all I was doing for 10 days straight. And the music was like fueling. It was just so much energy. It was incredible. Powerful.
Yeah, that woman with the dark hair, the tattoos, and that soulful voice. I think she's good.
That's exactly what's running through my mind.
Go places.
I was like, and I still remember this. No one bought a drink in that whole hour. We all just stood there and just watched her because we had no one had ever heard anything like that from such a tiny little woman. It was surreal.
Yeah, I think the first time I heard her singing, I said haunting was sort of the verb
that's really good. That's really good. I could talk about her like so much more, but it plain and short, like while I was bringing beer up the stairs, she was getting on stage and just kind of clocked me right across the face for some reason.
Because you had that.
I don't know. I have no idea.
You had the beer. She wanted the beer, I think.
No. She was drinking wild turkey with a couple ice cubes and a splash of Coca-Cola like the whole time. She had showed up like earlier in the day, and I was just kind of constantly replenishing the green room in this little dingy nightclub on 6th Street, dirty 6th Street as Austinites like to call it. Mm-hmm. And that's where all the music was. So she was kind of just bouncing around the street, going from gig to gig to gig, and she was closing like her day's worth of music that day in our venue. And everybody in the bar knows about her. Everybody knows about her. And I'm just like, Winehouse, what is that? A new restaurant down the street? Like, I just got so many names. It was like 30
We got a table at Winehouse for Friday. You have to join us.
And I'm like, I'm not even allowed to drink in here. But so I encounter her earlier in that day, she was doing they was doing a sound check for her in between sets, and because we were doing a reset. Usually there's like a bunch of day shows that a lot of people can come in. Then there's a hard reset for about an hour to let the headliners come in, kick everybody out of the bar, and then you line back up. Again, and that's very often for South by Southwest events during the music portion. A lot of stuff is open to the public, the music's there, and then kick everybody out, and then it's badge holders only for the evening set. So that's what we were doing. I was dropping some like water off, and then she was like mugging me. Like as soon as I came in, big cloud of smoke. You could still smoke in bars at the time too. She was just sitting in a corner, just kind of like staring at me, just like kind of holding her drink. I don't really think much of it for a few hours, and then I get a text message saying, a case of beer, a couple cases of beer up the stairs in the top level bar in the middle of the changeover. So I'm the only one that's allowed to go up the stairs because I'm working. Security's got everything blocked off. She comes down, flanked by two of her horn guys. She had 3 backup singers that played like they was horns. They were just horns guys. And she goes from like the middle of the staircase when I see her at the top to have like when we meet in the middle. It's a very wide staircase, and she's in the middle now. Mutters something I'll never know. Still has a drink in her hand with a free hand. Just goes and just clocks me. I'm just thinking, don't drop the beer, Martin. Don't drop the beer, dude. Because I'm just like doing the math. Like, how much is this going to come out of my tips tonight if I drop all this beer? And then I got to clean it.
Bottles or cans?
Yeah, bottles. Okay. So like 2 24 cases. So I'm holding like 40, 50 pounds of beer. And so I just like, don't drop the beer. At this point, it feels like an eternity. It was really just a couple seconds. She's waiting for me at the bottom of the staircase. The security guards on both ends of the staircase are just laughing at me. And I turn around, and she's just like waiting for me to kind of react, and laughs, gets on stage. Music starts playing. That's it. And I'm like, what just happened? The security guy at the top's like, what'd you do, little man? They were calling me little man. And I dropped the beer off at the bar, and I'm like, I could finally hold my face. Like it was red. Like I'm crying down like the side of my face.
She a righty or lefty?
I guess she is full right hand. So I guess she was a righty. Full right hand. I still see that. And very
still have the mark.
She was a small woman, but her her heels and her beehive hairdo, she was like almost at my eye line. So she had a good, clean line of sight, like right across my face. Tears. There was like stars. Again, I haven't been hit that hard ever by anyone.
She mistook you for an ex-boyfriend, perhaps.
There's actually closure to this 10 years later. But I dropped the beer off at the bar. Again, 2007, my very first South by. I'm a deer in headlights, and everyone has bets on me. They think I'm going to quit or freak out and run away like halfway through. No, I'm like the only person still there just running. Like they're like, dang, dude. Like I ended up getting a real job in bars after that because I proved my mettle. Like for many people at South by. But I dropped that beer off at the top bar, and I'm just finally holding my face. I'm like crying, like just like wailing, like the music's playing. No one can hear this but the bartender. He's like, dude, get yourself together. We have 3 more days of this. And I'm like mouthing, I'm like, smack me, all these things. And he's humoring me. He's like, who did it? We'll kick him out. Like, why haven't you already told security? I'm like, no, on stage. And he looks over. He's like, Martin, it's Amy Winehouse. I'm like, who is Amy Winehouse? Yeah. People are looking at me like, who are you? And I'm like, it's like, why is everybody hating me right now?
I'm the guy who just got slapped by Amy Winehouse. That's who I am.
And so I'm downstairs 15 minutes later. Now I know who she is because I'm watching no one buy a drink. Everyone's just staring there. And like, I'm just like, ooh, she's good. Wow.
Yeah.
Like,
she can really sing good. She can sing and slap.
I think I've heard this song on the radio before, kind of thing. I'm like, oh, this is the person everyone was talking about all week. And there's always like a darling of South by. Every year there's always somebody that everybody wants to see. She was that person, and I didn't know any of this still. That was still my first time, involved in the festival, just as a lowly little bar back. Since then, definitely been able to do a lot of stuff. But halfway through the set, she's finished her drink. And security's already told everybody in the bar, little man just got, punk slapped by Amy Winehouse. I don't know if I can swear on this, but I was bitch slapped.
Sure, why not?
Little man got bitch slapped by Amy Winehouse, so everyone's just like, what'd you do? The same thing, like, what'd you do to her? Like, what were you asking? Like, don't talk to the talent, dude. You're the bar back. Yeah. I'm like, I didn't do anything. I was just dropping water off, and she looked at me funny. She finishes her drink. It's just done. I found videos of like this whole set too. I was like, wow, my memory was pretty on point. Just what she was wearing, what she was drinking. I'm like, all right, I didn't make this up. She finishes.
You don't forget stories like that. You remember every detail. It's incredible.
Yeah, so halfway through the set, she's done. She gets on the mic and, in that little Cockney accent, she's like, "Oh, need another." And I'm sitting down at the back of the bar because no one's doing anything. I'm just like cleaning up a little bit, but no one's buying a drink. And as soon as she says that, all the bartenders, like dominoes, just like, dun, 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 just look down the bar and look at me, and they just start pouring up another one. They're like, "Go get her, lover boy," and they give me the drink, and I have to kind of move, like moving through the crowd. I'm like, I have her drink, put it down at the bottom. She just kind of gets down a little gingerly, picks up the drink, gives me a little smile, and then just keeps on with the set. And then the set's over, they leave, and that was it. That was the time I met Amy Winehouse. But it wasn't until 10 years later that I figured out why. And it was actually, I'm going to share it a little bit too. So this is a buddy of mine. His name's Zeely. Zeely, if you're out there, man, I miss you. And this is actually
What's up, Zeely?
Yeah, this is in Arlen Studios. Which is a pretty famous recording studio here in Austin. I was fortunate enough to work on a few events for South by Southwest there for about 3 years. Really beautiful music showcase. It's Willie Nelson's, like family that runs it, and very legendary spot if you know the music scene in Austin. So I was working on a couple of events there, music related, and our headliner for like the first night, she's from the UK. There's definitely a history of very well-known artists in her family and her drummer's family, names that we know, that I'm not going to say here, but I'm telling her the same story, just like I always had. And halfway through the story, she's like, stop, darling, what'd she do to you? She already knows it's Amy Winehouse. She's like, what'd she do to you? And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like, no. She scratched you. She yelled at you. She punched you. What happened? And I'm like, wait, how do you know that? How do you know this punchline already? She's like, oh, darling.
Literally punchline.
Yeah, I'm like, the punchline of the story. I'm like, I didn't even finish it. I've told this story a lot to many people, and everyone had some speculations. Like, nah, she was just drunk. No. Oh, you look like somebody. And she confirmed it. She's like, oh, you had a spitting look just like a boy. And back in. I'm like,
oh my God.
Oh,
wow.
She grew up with her. I found that really weird. That was really weird. So 10 years of that, and then I finally found closure in that first year we started 8Player Media, because that's when we started doing this event here at Arlen Studios.
I love it.
Yeah. So that was my first real kind of throwing out. I was already started the social media marketing agency. That worked. I ended up working at some tech companies. I worked at Facebook as an early employee in Austin, moved on to Google, but I never lost my sense and drive for events. And many of those tech companies were starting to really get involved with South by Southwest at the time. Mm-hmm. So I was helping put on and represent, like Google. They had they'd rented out an entire district called the Rainey Street District. That's a lot different now than it was, 7-8 years ago. Got to do some really cool stuff working with them. Started another company that was in technology. It was an event production CRM, and we did a lot of crazy events to put that on too. It was really crazy marketing stunts. I got us on MTV. It looked a lot different on that TV show. But as we were promoting that product, got a ton of users when the show premiered, and had a blast doing it. But we learned a lot out of it. We ran out of runway, jumped back into larger corporate style of events, leading up to about 2016. And when that was done, I was just traveling around the country, and I was doing more of the drier kind of events. Again, the trade shows, the conferences, I'm in Vegas a lot, convention centers, all that
Sure.
stuff. San Francisco, but never really lost my sense of the music. I always wanted to go back to the music. So when the transition happened, I traveled most of the country in 2016. And by the end of that year, which was, I think, also a very traumatic year for some people, given just the elections and everything else going on. I sit down at my computer and I'm just kind of at a loss. I'm like, what's next? And that's where 8Player Media kind of came in. No big roundabout story, but the origins happened with Amy. She kind of slapped me into this industry, to put it simple. But the goal was always we only want to work with the best. We only want to put on the best, because the events that we had done up to this point, there are people that I still meet that are like, wait, you did that event? I'm like, yeah. Yeah, we did that. Not just me, but it was a lot of people. We did that. It was like, that was amazing. And they tell me stories that I've never heard, that of events and experiences that we put on years ago. We're craving that. We want to continue doing that. And it started a lot with just working with artists. Yeah. It started a lot with just, trying to elevate some of our artists' friends. getting them gigs, doing just free social media work, organizing other showcase events that we weren't going to make a lot of money on, just so we could make the magic happen again. We felt like we were doing something. And South by has always been a nexus point for that.
Yeah.
Gives us the biggest breadth of experimentation and opportunity, because you have so many people, and there's a lot of other great producers doing cool stuff, all in like a 1.5 mile, 2 mile radius, which is what that's inspiring.
8-Player Media has not been around a long time, but you went from essentially being a bar back to then undertaking this huge piece of business, of production business, at one of the most famous festivals in the world last year. How did that come about? I know you had a lot of connections already with South by, but what was it like working officially as a partner or advisor, perhaps, to that festival? And then what was the scope of the project that you guys put together?
So as we started 8-Player Media, we got a lot of recognition. I also, because of my work being a startup or an entrepreneur and working in the startup and technology communities in Austin, I got involved with a startup accelerator. So in my spare time, I run a startup accelerator where I teach entrepreneurs how to launch companies, mostly in technology, but we're pretty agnostic on the vertical.
Yeah. Is that Founders Institute, Texas? Is that it?
Yeah, that's the Founder Institute. So I helped launch our Austin chapter. It's a global program. People would have ideas that want to start companies, don't know where to start. They come to us. And we have a pretty rigorous curriculum that teaches them the building blocks. We connect them with mentors, advisors, resources, and by the end of it, if they remain, it's a pretty tough program. Not many people finish that start. They have a fully incorporated business, a community of people that are supporting them, likely a team of advisors, if not maybe a co-founder if they found it in the program. So that's been fun. It also involves a lot of events, and so I could take some of that conference and trade show experience and take it to startups. The value that we could provide for South by, at least from my skill sets, I've helped support a lot of the front end stuff with technology. There's a big pitch event that goes on every year that I serve as I help judge, and I source other people to participate and apply to pitch. But also, given a lot of my work over the years, doing a lot of just activations and music showcases and just being involved in music from the beginning, I could also provide a perspective to brands and clients that were coming into town. Maybe it was their first South by, or maybe they wanted to go bigger than just buying out, a restaurant for the night and having really just turnkey kind of operation. They wanted to experiment. Same goes for new venues in town, venues that just were really hot places that just needed to get their feet wet, didn't really know a lot about how do you work with the city or the organization at large and manage a client simultaneously. I would come in and we'd help kind of guide them through that process.
Okay.
So very much like a glue between a lot of different moving parts that is the conference and festival. And there's many of me too. There's tons of people that from an advisory role that support the conference and festival from just different facets. It might be different arms of the conference. There's so many tracks. There's like 13, 14 tracks of content, not just music, not just film.
Yeah, it's grown incredibly over the years. I'm sure
podcasts. There's our podcast track, just like like this. There's literature. There's edu, and there's certain advisors for all that. But I'm one of the rarities in that I can hop from several different ones, and because I've done so many things throughout my career that involves it. So when this coming year, when 2019 came around, I was already working with a new venue. Honestly, I don't know what happened to them since, but that we came on, but I was also serving as an advisor. So it was kind of a match made in heaven. They're like, oh, we need somebody to help us guide this new venue, take it to the next level. You're already working with them. You're the guy. Let help us with this, please. I'm like, sure. How can I help?
Yeah.
Let's make it work. I love South by. I love the magic that happens on it. And so helped to guide this venue through the full 10 days of the conference. About a dozen different activations, 4 major clients. I didn't sleep much that week. I think I walked like 120 miles total throughout the 10 days.
Jeez.
My feet were, you don't ever want to look at them. They're like Shrek feet. So it was a lot
you got your steps in on your Fitbit though, right?
Oh no, man. My Apple Watch on the final day, because I didn't move, was like, are you okay? Like, do you need to go? Do you want us to call like EMS? Because you haven't moved in 10 hours. And I'm like, no, I'm asleep. Just leave me alone, Apple Watch. So we guided them through that. The permit process. So you have to work with the city a lot. That can be a nightmare. You have to manage expectations of the clients, the talent, the organization at large, as well as the venue that you're working with. So one of our first clients that came in was Facebook. This was kind of their biggest first, front end facing event that I ever done. I think I'll show you that. Move myself a little out the way. We hosted Tour Moi, which was great. We built out, a stage and a whole little kind of festival grounds in a 15,000 square foot parking lot, which isn't a lot in festival terms. It's like the pit, at a small stage for any random event or any random festival. But we made it work, and that was fun. I love just kind of watching, all these crews come in the middle of the night, build stuff up, test things out. Then as soon as the show's over, they come, tear it down, move it away.
So much work for such a short little period of time, but so worth it.
Yeah, but that hour of experience that the attendees are getting from something like that, you're sitting there. When he's in the last couple of songs, sound engineers just taking a break. I'm sitting in the chair and just like, this is why we do what we do. That made it worth it. But as soon as they were done, the next stage rolls in, and and then we're working with a different client. So making sure the client, all that stuff gets out the door, make sure they're happy. We reset the whole space again from the venue standpoint, and then on the dot, next partner, next client comes in, and that was the monster. So this was definitely something that was in South by Southwest lore for 2019. We didn't announce it until 12 hours before we were supposed to, literally the day before the guy was supposed to take stage. But then we brought Jay Balvin, so as you can see here, and so if you look at from Tour Moi, that's an SL100, standard small stage, to a 320. Which is like a mid-level festival stage that has no business being in 15,000 square feet. The city did not want this to happen, but it happened. We did everything right. There's a lot of sound ordinance stuff you had to do because you're building stages in parking lots in the middle of neighborhoods. You're not on wide festival grounds. There's just a lot of moving parts and permissions you have to get from so many different organizations to do something like that.
So you have to know all that stuff beforehand. And you had seen how these were working, sort of the cogs behind the in the wheel were working before you even did this. So you had a bit of a leg up just from being someone behind the scenes doing smaller jobs over the years leading up to this.
Yeah, certainly a buildup. It was certainly a buildup. And, from working with the city on smaller permanent events, just mass gatherings, Austin has a pretty efficient events just department that focuses strictly on large gatherings, which I know, many cities do, but Austin, because of, they call it spring festival season, but that just means South by Southwest, but that's what spring festival season is. And, they have set rules on how this is going to work. If it's an official event, there's certain deadlines to get those permits and layouts and floor plans in, runs a show. And then you have, 15, 20-minute meetings with the city because they're cycling through hundreds of you. This particular event, just to work with the city, took 3 separate 1-hour meetings, which doesn't really happen ever. Because when you're dealing with what the city refers to as a tier 1 artist like a J Balvin, so many more precautions you have to put into place. First, even with somebody who's a great artist like Toro or Chaz, it's to go to another level, to a tier 1 artist in just that amount of space. An artist like this only normally just plays in front of no less than 10 to 15,000 people. I can only fit 750 people in this space, given the footprint of this monster. The dynamics really change. You have to think a lot more about crowd surge control, security blocks.
Probably number one would be security.
All of that. I've never had to hire as many security people for such a small footprint ever. I don't know if I'll ever do that again. I don't know if it's even possible given
right.
But those are the things and precautions you have to take into place because, there have been moments throughout South by over the years where tragedy has happened. And without those particular moments of tragedy, we wouldn't have the security procedures in place that would allow us to accomplish something like this.
If I wanted to present or produce or have a stage next year at South by to produce events, when do you find out that you got the license or you got you get your permit? Is it like right after the last one ends? So do you have like 11 and a half months to plan it? Or is it, do you find out like about this time and then you're like, oh man, we really need to hustle now?
For most people, you're already ideating on what you learned from the last year. If you own a venue or if you do a consistent event every year, which many organizations do, brands do, you just take those lessons learned. You can kind of carbon copy your layouts, floor plans, and permit requests, and just put it in the queue. But normally you need to have a lot of that stuff done and solidified, at least with your clients, like who are you working with by the end of that year.
Okay.
So normally we're starting our negotiation process right now, talking with brands, talking with venues, places that are going to start exploring courting brands. But some of the biggest brands that you see have already signed the paperwork. By the first of the year, you should have a lot of, your nuts and bolts tightened up. And then there's a deadline process, that you have to submit all of those master layouts and floor plans by.
Okay.
That the city needs to process. If you get it in just a minute after it's rejected,
Wow.
You got to do it. And you're working with South by Southwest. If you are doing an official scale thing, you have people on the other side that are guiding you through that process if it's the first time, or you're bringing in people like myself to help guide you through that process. And then you go have a meeting with the city. That normally happens within the month leading up to the conference and festival, and then throughout that month, now you have to go through all the checks and balances, dealing with upwards of a dozen different departments to ensure that you're compliant to all of the things and permits that you submitted for.
Okay. And now I imagine going forward, you mentioned security, and obviously there is a feeling right now about too much security or law enforcement and so on. These events have to be safe. There has to be adults watching over this that are well-trained. What do you see security looking like in the year 2021? Let's say, perfect scenario, vaccine, 80% of people are taking it. South by is going to be running at 80% capacity in 2021. What does a 15,000 square foot parking lot or field, let's say, look like from a security and safety standpoint? The big question is, what's the approach?
Yeah. Well, again, that's a great question too. And you're right. It is a little loaded because I think from a city standpoint, again, I can't speak for them directly, but from just in my experience, they tend to want more. They tend to want more security because they want to ensure safety of the general public.
Now, are these Austin cops or are these private security groups that you hire?
So it'll be a mix. So, the city's already going to give you X amount of, actual paid, police resources, given just where they anticipate crowds coming from, intersectional points where people are crossing major streets.
Sure.
They're already going to be there. Depending on what they anticipate, and this is why you have to go through all of this permitting so early, is so the city can budget and allocate appropriately staffing from PD. But then when you're dealing of security at like egress points and floating throughout the venue itself, then you hire private. So it'll be a mix when you're thinking of something at that scale. But to be honest, we're not sure that, we'll be able to do this like to that scale, 15,000 square foot of, footprint for 500 people even. So in anticipation, probably security will get scaled down a little bit, but also those roles will change too. So, if we don't have a vaccine by next March, which I hope that's not the case, you're also hiring different staffers. Or you're training security for new things like checking temperatures at the door, enforcing certain restrictions if it's masks or any kind of social distancing in line queues. That seems probable. And again, in enforcing it, inside the venue. But also, I don't anticipate indoor venues really being utilized. So a lot of the things will take place outside. They'll take place on rooftops. They'll take place in the parking lots. But I doubt we'll have a stage that big in a parking lot that big for that many people. So those dynamics are going to change drastically. One thing that we're exploring right now, because we've started to see this happen in more controlled settings, is putting on live events or hybrid events of the sort where you're very, very methodical on your testing methods. So I know testing is a real big thing right now. States were struggling for a number of months doing it, but now it's getting to a point where supply chains are starting to get a little fleshed out, where suppliers stateside are starting to develop relationships on where testing is being developed. South Korea, China, many places on that side of the world that are developing these things. And you're able to purchase them as a private company and offer that to attendees. So I envision, and something that we might be experimenting with towards the end of this year at APM, is is a hybrid, very intimate event, but we're doing very rigorous testing for talent, any principal organizers, and also testing attendees at the door.
Okay.
Not with antibody tests, stuff that we're still exploring, but the options are there. And there have been some case studies that are already showing that. Dave Chappelle is actually at the forefront of this right now. If you haven't been following what Dave Chappelle's been doing, is I think he lives on a farm like in Ohio, and he's been gathering. He's been calling it like a Chappelle summer camp. Every weekend he's doing stuff. He invites a bunch of attendees to come. I don't know how they're buying tickets or like through him, but they all have to socially distance. They're doing temperature checks. It's mask only. There are cordoned off spaces where they can take off their masks. It's when they're sitting down listening to the music, because he always has, Talib Kweli, who we've worked with in the past, or just tons of other performing artists come and sing. But he tests all of his talent, his friends. They all do tests in advance so that they know when they fly in to Ohio and go to the summer camp, they can hang on each other. They can hug. They can share a stage. They can share mics. And not have to wear a mask and take those precautions. So it's just the rigorous testing and access to that testing that's been critical right now. And in doing so, you're ensuring that trust that the attendees need. And that's the biggest thing. As organizers, you have to ensure trust to your attendees. And even more so today, because a lot of colleagues and myself as the leader of our company and people we worked with, nobody wants to be that first live event. No one wants to be the first. Just like as you mentioned, nobody wants to be the first to get the vaccine. Nobody wants to be the first live event because there's just too much risk, and you can't ensure trust for your attendees yet. But if you can instill that confidence, not only that you can put on the event and ensure the safety and health of your attendees, it's not going to be 1,000 people like you hope, but maybe you can do 100. Maybe you can do 50, or maybe you could do 500 like Dave Chappelle's doing. But they're putting in, he also has a lot of resources to do it. But for the regular, Joe Schmo organizer like myself, and maybe many of you that are watching, that is possible too. It's just developing that new system. And you're going to also have to think about new roles. For these tests, you'll need some registered technician that can actually apply them. Right. You'll need to partner with a lab, especially if you're doing larger, more of the intensive tests. So right now, the ones you could do at the door are the antibodies that are like a finger prick of blood, and you can tell right on the spot, if you have the antibodies or if you haven't. It's not a full safe, but that's enough confidence, is enough trust you've established with your attendees that an attendee will probably pay for that. The attendee would pay is I'll buy a ticket so I can go. I trust that, and I get a test. Yeah, that's great. Beats waiting in line inside of a CVS for 8 hours. Right. So those are really interesting things that I have no doubt you'll start to see towards the end of the year. But it's still in the nascent developmental phase right now. So just when you think about staff and support, security is certainly going to be one piece that we'll have to change and adapt on how they even engage attendees and maybe what their roles are requiring of them. But also you're going to have additional staff too to ensure health and safety. You always have the EMS tent at a larger festival. You may have one at a smaller one now too.
At all festivals
or all the time might be requisite for smaller events in general. So you just know that you're taking temperatures appropriately. If you are doing testing at the door, you have somebody competent and the resources in place to show that what you're just not doing it for aesthetics. You're actually doing it because you want to know. And also the procedures for an attendee in terms of contact tracing and all that fun stuff.
It's incredible. Health and safety are really going hand in hand. And then, of course, once you feel like you're safe in the venue from a health standpoint, then it's looking around and feeling like you're safe because you see that there's 500 people there and there's 20 security people that are there, making sure that nobody's sneaking in. Because that's the thing. It's I want to sneak into an event, but now it's people are really gonna be upset. It used to be oh cool, he hopped the fence or something. Now it's hey, we all got our temperature checked, and you just hopped the fence. You could have brought COVID in here.
Yeah, but honestly though, there's always going to be people like that. I just honestly think that you might even see less of that because those people otherwise aren't even going to go outside. It's oh, I'm not even buying a ticket. I'm not even going to try.
Yeah, I hope there are those people that are I don't feel good or something, so I am going to stay away instead of being selfish and showing up. Look, we could talk South by all day, but on your Instagram, I saw another festival. As I said, we talk about everything in festival formats here, but it looks like you have this nice music, if it's a festival or not, but it's called Unofficial. What's Unofficial all about? Because you've done a few of those.
Yeah. So that's actually part of our startup, with the startup world. So, I mean, there's a pretty robust startup accelerator scene. It's just startups in general, venture capital. For those of you who know those words, great. For those of you that don't, it's when you're starting a company, mostly a lot of companies in technology, but otherwise, other industries too. If you're structured the right way, you go look to raise money as to help fund and grow your business. So there's a week every year in Austin called Austin Startup Week that sharing a lot of content. So I host panels. We actually did one for Hi, How Are You last year too, where I had Tom of the project and Austin City Limits sit down with us, and also the founder of the organization that I run. We had some really cool people show up for that, and we talked just about mental health. So it's a lot of content driven, and it's a community driven week of events and programming, similar to South by. South by is a community-driven organization with events and all that. So the Unofficial has kind of been a tongue-in-cheek closing party, since it wasn't really on the official bill of the week of programming. And a few of us as startup organizations came together, pooled our resources together, and really, and kind of brought it to them, say, hey, I would love to do something that I normally do in March in the fall for us. Let's see if we can do that. So we found a great venue to host it. Last couple years running. The first year was indoors. Last year's was outdoors. And so we feature startups from all around the state. A lot of the companies that we graduate from the Founder Institute program in Texas, pop-up activations for them. We like to engage the consumer packaged good ecosystem here too, CPGs as they're called, doing vendor showcases so they get to sample all of their goods and wares and just show off all the cool brands and stuff. And in turn, they're donating a ton of product so that we can make the event free to just imbibe and eat. So that's always nice. It's put on a little mini day festival that we've been able to do. So the Unofficial, as we've called it, has allowed us to really kind of keep our muscles strong and flex throughout the whole time that we've been doing this, and also feature performing artists, many of whom I'm honored to call friends, something to do and an audience to engage that they otherwise wouldn't see on a normal basis. Or last year we got to feature a good friend of mine, his name's Mobley, who's been cranking out a bunch of work right now. He's a local performing artist and also a great technologist. He builds some of his own music equipment for many of his sets.
And has he not been sued by Moby yet? I think Moby would be like, hey, that sounds a lot like my name.
No, but I do have a friend named Moby, and he goes on Instagram as Not That Moby.
That's my Instagram handle too, Pat Tully, not Moby. But I don't know. I'll change it.
Same. But so that's been great. That's been awesome to see. Our community, the startup community, because many of those people, are going to festivals. They're going to concerts. And it gives us a chance to really elevate all of these great organizations that we partner with, organizations that some of our startups will go into that are venture backed so they can get funding to grow their companies, but also feature a lot of brands and products in Austin, from snack brands to alcohol beverage brands, giving them an audience at the closing of a very big week of just all things startups and entrepreneurs. Something to really celebrate, because how we all saw of it is that it's almost been about 10 years since Austin Startup Week's been around. We saw that there was an opportunity to really just close it out with a bang, true to Austin, and make it feel like you are attending like a South by Southwest event. And that's what we've been doing. That's what we've really been doing too. What sucks is I don't think we're gonna be able to do it this year. I know we're exploring virtual opportunities, so we may have something cooking up at the end of September, early October, that might be some kind of virtual concert event.
Well, that dovetails nicely into our last and final part I want to talk about. Of course, I said we'd be talking for a half hour, and now I've gone well over an hour with you, so I apologize for that. But it's been great.
I could talk for days on this stuff.
Yeah. So let's enter COVID Confidential. It's COVID Confidential time.
Oh, I like that.
So you mentioned talking about you put on these events and people later would be like, ooh, that was you? And that's a big part of your brand. Mm-hmm. Going virtual, the first thing I see on your website pretty much now is we'll produce your virtual event. So how are you taking you're so proud of your brand and the events that you throw. So how are you pivoting? And there's another one, pivot right there. Put it down. Give the man a quarantine bingo prize.
You get a face mask. You get a
face a year worth of branded face masks, Shiner Bock face masks for everybody, direct from Austin. But what makes your events not only stand out, but how do you produce them at a level that you are happy with?
I think I had mentioned it a little earlier. It's a matter of equipment. What gear can you repurpose? So I can't show you right now, but I know you have a setup too, because I see your opposable arm, but I have one right now too with lighting, my webcam. I got my 3-point lighting system in here as well. Just all those things that you're having to just study up on. Things that we hire freelance video crews for all of our events as well, because we were doing live streams. We were ready for our live events. They were very just one-dimensional. It was just something to add on, and it was a product offering we would add on to our clients as well. It's like, we can live stream this too. Do you want to live stream it? They're like, yeah. I'm like, just give me all your channels. I'll send it over to my team. Now we're all like me. I'm having to learn all that now because a lot of my video guys, they're taking up other jobs, or they're again, it's been tough for a lot of my creatives that help us put this stuff on. So I'm having to take on that. I'm having to train up some of my team that are normally just event coordinators. They just help with us with the vendors. They help with Regid and day of check-in registration. Now I have to get them. I'm paying for Zoom accounts so that I can train them up on how to run and be proper moderators and hosts for breakouts. Right. So we're just adapting. As I mentioned, we spent probably the first 3 months just learning. Watching how other larger events transitioned, if they could even at all, how other larger event, big box organizations were adapting. Some are doing very well because they were already diving into virtual events way before this. Others that are big box and local or regional producers are struggling because they can't just get over the fixed costs, and maybe they didn't get enough of that PPE loan to take care of their staff, so they're struggling.
And they can't be nimble, which was another new quarantine word we can use that you used earlier. You said nimble. I like that one.
So in startup terminology, this has really been our competitive advantage in that because of that, the mobility that we've had to adapt and repurpose, and without a lot of fixed costs and infrastructure costs, we've been able to move faster and build things out faster and host, events already. Mostly have been just hour-long segmented, events that are almost, they're very much like the Startup Week events that we do, where it's panels, workshops, discussions. So we're just trying to figure out, all right, who's going to be the best talking heads for these events? Because you want to encourage a lot of it. And you got to treat it almost like a TV show. There's a certain polish. Your mannerisms, your tone exaggerates, your pacing changes. And so it's a lot of these little smaller things that these little micro adaptations that we're having to build on while watching everybody else, struggle too, because no one's gotten it right yet. No one is going to get it right anytime soon. So experimentation more than ever is very much welcome. And if you're not experimenting with anything, if you're not growing, you're dying, as I've heard, I guess, Tony Robbins say that. But
that sounds like a Tony Robbins.
Yeah, it sounds like a Tony Robbins thing too, right? I'm not too much a follower, but there's some things that I'll steal from him.
Giving him no credit, of course.
No credit, steal. Good artist copy, great artist steal. But so what we've been doing now and what we see this going is just if you can start really mastering tools and also watching the audience. So all the time, I'm always in gallery view, for many of these larger events that I might just be attending. Right. And so I'm watching how people are behaving. I'm also simultaneously watching the speaker. Are they pausing? Are they just being awkward? Are they still not even figuring out how to do this? Which many people are. Say about 90% of people just aren't comfortable looking into that camera.
Yeah.
They're putting too much blame on the systems that they're using, the tools that they're using, so that there's a pause, or they're not taking enough leadership and ownership in like, oh nope, I hear somebody talking, I'm going to mute you. Boom, I muted you. Versus, oh, I hear an echo, somebody's on mute. Can you go on mute? But again, take out those awkward pauses and just own it. So the ADD in me is actually coming in the clutch right now, because then I can just juggle all of these things simultaneously, and it's starting to make it work seamless. Another things that we've been integrating too is the music piece. So many of these events that we normally have, sometimes they're midday, whereas they'd be like networking events in the evening that we normally host. That's probably the majority of the events that we do. We did like over 150 of those kind of events just last year alone.
Yeah.
With a major quarterly event, or like in South by cases, like 10 days of just insanity, which is like our Olympics and Super Bowl and everybody's birthday and national holidays combined. We've been able to feature artists. So sometimes I'll open up with a normal, networking style content led event with a performing artist, or we're playing their music leading into it and we're promoting them. Towards the end of the event, I may close with them doing a live set. And then we're plugging in their Instagram handles or their Venmos so they can get tips, virtual tip jars, that kind of stuff. So our artists, a lot of the artists that we've worked with have had chances to play still, and they don't have to go anywhere. They already have their home studios set up as well. All they got to do is plug in, get on, make sure that their mic's on, and then they just start jamming. They don't got to lug their gear around anymore.
And they can do 3 gigs a day instead of 1.
Yeah. Well,
maybe.
In the South by Southwest world, they're doing 5 still. They're just running from set to set.
Stage to stage.
But that's been nice. That's been nice to see. We're looking at organizing similar, again, a virtual kind of day festival towards the end of the year, if we can pull it off and get enough people and partners on board where we can do that still. But, again, from the comfort of your own home. And also the onboarding piece. So there really is a lot of education on the back end, not just for your partners, but also the attendees, if you're using new tools. We're looking at not just, Zoom strictly, but, broadcasting to Twitch. A lot of our artists that we've worked with have really started to take over Twitch.
Sure.
Formerly a gaming platform, formerly just a regular streaming platform. I don't know if people know about what it used to be. It's called Justin.tv, then turned into Twitch.
Yeah.
And then so focused on gamers, because of what they realized with Justin.tv, it was just, gamers were just streaming their stuff. But now music has really transitioned over. One of the really great examples of this, surprisingly, was Willie Nelson and the Nelson family. They have something called the Luck Reunion Tour that happens every year in March, that last Thursday of South by Southwest. And, they were going to go ahead as is. A week later, they cancel. And then they shifted it all online onto Twitch. So of course they have resources, but they were using broadcasting third-party tools, and they had a mix of pre-recorded sets with live sets from the artists that they originally had on the bill. And for 6 hours straight, it was just 3 songs per artist, seamless transitions with little buffers in between of like a mixologist teaching you how to make a cocktail, or a hat maker showing you how he does it in his workshop. Yeah. And then finally culminates to an hour set by Willie and his sons. They've been at the forefront. I applaud everybody over at the Luck team that's been doing it well, and they've been doing it right. And they're raising a ton of money for artists.
Don't tell Willie he can't. Yeah, don't tell Willie that an old dog can't learn new tricks, man.
Oh, it might even. I think his son is also driving a lot of it too, Lucas Nelson. It's been, but that's been inspiring to see. They just didn't lose a beat, and just engage. So engaging that community has also been critical as well. So I know I've been jumping around on answering the question, but that's what we've been seeing. We've just been watching, our idols do it, the ones that have been doing it. And again, stealing what we can, learning what we can, back channeling, and learn how they did it, and then starting to apply it at a smaller scale. So we've started to test out, smaller couple dozen attendees, our closest friends that can give us honest critical feedback on how they liked it on the other side, what they could see more. And we're just building and building and building. So moving forward, I know as we head into the fall, we're hoping to be able to continue with that, continue to add more depth to our capabilities, and hope that, by the time we execute something that we think is going to be good at scale, the technology has caught up to us as well, so that we can do it at scale. And maybe there's some other new immersive things out there that we can adapt to. I've looked at a few different tools also that basically turn you into like a video game avatar, like a Nintendo Wii character or something. And you're moving around. Which has
always been a dream of mine. So that would be great.
You're moving around in a little world, like a resort or a venue. And it's all proximity based too. So the sound that you hear is based on where you're located within that space. So if I'm walking up to another avatar, having a conversation with somebody else, like when I get to a certain radius relative to where it's at, I can start hearing that conversation and join in. So I've seen virtual events take place. I've seen concerts and conferences take place on these little virtual worlds, but you have to onboard the attendees. It's like teaching a video game from the ground up. It's like, all right, the keys allow you to move X, Y, and Z. Hold down Shift, hit the space bar. It's just like learning a video game. Not everyone's going to enjoy that. It's certainly a unique way to bring a live experience to the virtual. And what's surprising is that a lot of these tools have been here for about a decade, but now they're just getting that attention. So those are the things that we're looking at. Those are the things that we've seen. And me as a technologist and an events person, I just, this is actually a very exciting time because it reminds me a lot of, over a decade ago when I started that social media marketing agency, because nobody was doing it. You could see where this was going. And if you got ahead of it, if you just knew where that puck was going to go, that you're going to be so far ahead of the competition, those big monoliths, or even the medium-sized, big box, regional, local firms, that you're just going to, we're going to take all your business because we are faster. We know where it's going, and we have the contacts to actually pull it off because we've already been in this industry for longer than we realize. So that, again, that's the exciting piece.
Nimble. It's because you're nimble. That's why.
Nimble.
So I will end on one question here. Besides hard life lessons, as we've all learned during quarantine and COVID, you've learned new technologies very clearly, but this is something that you really enjoyed doing. But was there anything else that you learned that you wanted to, like, let's say you picked up an instrument that you've been wanting to do, writing, maybe cooking, or learning a foreign language? I have kept myself very busy by learning the technology and learning how to do virtual events for nonprofits and turning myself into a virtual auctioneer. I cooked for my wife nearly every day, and I love it. And I just I have this like little Amazon Fire thing, not a sponsor of the podcast, so we should get them as well. But I had that set up, and I've been watching cooking lessons, learning basic stuff, but having a lot of fun with that. But is there anything outside the tech stuff, outside of actual work, that you have learned or started to enjoy more during this time?
I've certainly started to read a lot more. I've had have a little bit more time to read, and definitely cooking more. But I've always been a bit of a foodie. I take that from my time working in bars and restaurants. That's when I really learned what food should taste like. But no offense to my mom, but yeah, it was like
we love you, Mom. We love you, Mom, but no offense.
Yeah, like we never had heirloom, tomatoes and mushrooms in our house. We didn't know that.
When you're 9 years old, you're like, are these heirloom tomatoes, Mom?
Is this vegan, Mom? Or GMO free? All that kind of stuff. No, we just did. But so definitely had that. We definitely trying to get outside more often. We bought a new bicycle. But really on the technology side, it's just been like teaching myself stuff that I've always wanted to learn. I'm starting diving into video editing a little bit. Trying to experiment back into music. I played a lot of instruments when I was young, kind of lost it, but now, let's kind of return to it, but also use some of the tools that we have here. So just kind of creating, got a little soundboard, starting to experiment with sounds. Not ready for anything prime time yet, but at least helps educate me a little bit more on the structure on all the things that I would normally hire people for.
Yeah.
So like, what's the video editing process like? What are all the terminologies and nomenclature that whole industry thinks about? Same goes for music. I've always watched music. I've always had, begrudgingly, sometimes I've had to be like stagehand support and audio tech, even though I had no business around any cable, XLR cables or things. So like now really kind of diving into, all right, what did I screw up on? Let's dive into that, learn a little bit more. So I've really kind of just been trying to dabble in as much as possible. A close colleague of mine has called this the Great Reset. We are going through the Great Reset right now.
Oh, sure.
And where everything's on pause. And what happens during that pause time, you don't have to go and learn a new foreign language or, become a bread baking connoisseur, but this should give you an opportunity to stop, reflect on everything that you've done to this point, understand what you might not be able to do for the time being, and go maybe look at some of the things you always wanted to do or look and discover, and maybe spend a little bit of time on that. Just maybe a little bit of time on that. So I've had a chance to just be able to do, spend a little bit of time on this, a little bit of time on that, and just further develop my fluency when I can go back over there and work with my video teams, in real time on a set somewhere. I'm just that much more dialed in on what they're talking about. Or, if I go see some people in a recording studio or helping somebody shoot a music video or just deal with a lot of audio nerds, I know what they're saying as well. That's kind of the fluencies that I've been trying to figure out and just get better at. And
in a way, it's like picking up a new language.
Very much. All the industry languages that happen.
Yeah.
We've certainly developed our own in the events world. So what is that language in the video world? What's that in the audio world? All of that's coming together. And so when we get out of it, we're all going to be fully competent broadcasters when it's all said.
Hey, I dropped chroma key before. I did not know what a chroma key was around St. Patrick's Day. Now I could probably layer a background and so on. So
so like all of these, like I've done through so many broadcasting tools now, and just figuring out all of these things. Like I'm a full like Zoom master now. As you mentioned, volunteering for some nonprofits. I was just coming out of a nonprofit event that I was moderating for a couple hundred young ladies. It was United States Young Women's Association. So trying to get women better in office, becoming business leaders, becoming just more vocal in their communities, which was a great thing. But jumping right into that, and that's something else too. It's like going from one venue cross town to another, so you can hit an appointment. It's just a matter of a click, click, click. But if you told me 6 months ago that the Zoom that we were using just for the conference calls is now our primary communication tool, our primary event tool, I'd say you're out of your mind.
Right.
And also, oh, by the way, you're going to have to be fully competent about it, competent and fluent in it, so that you can educate other people at scale in 6 months. I'd be like, you're out of your mind. But such is the world right now, right?
Such is the world. Well, look, you are now my favorite, Martin. Ladies and gentlemen, friends of Festival Pass Stories, you have been listening to the managing director and founder of A Player Media, Martin Martinez. Martin, how can we find out more about your company and the great advances you're making in virtual events?
Absolutely. So if you want to learn a little more APM, head on over to aplayermedia.com, aplayermedia.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at the same name, aplayermedia. Also on Twitter. We're pretty active on Twitter. We love to retweet all the people that we love to champion and promote, artists, events, just conversations that are around creativity and businesses. We're pretty active there. You should start seeing more of our activities start popping up in the months ahead back on Instagram. If you want to connect with me more directly, you can find me at Martin Martin on both those channels as well. I tend to avoid Facebook, so you can really just find me kind of lurking on Instagram at Martin Martin, Martin, Marteen, and then you'll see me also chatting up a storm and retweeting things that just bring me joy on Twitter at the same handle, Martin Martin.
Excellent. And you can, of course, find us on Instagram at festival_pass or at festivalpass.com, where you can see all the Festival Pass stories. Martin, thank you. Stay safe. I think that was one more quarantine thing, but that's just a nice way to say stay safe. Thank you so much for the time. And we look forward to seeing you in Austin in person when this is all behind us.
Be safe, wear a mask, wash your hands, take care of each other.
Yeah, take care, buddy. This is Festival Pass Stories, a podcast series is told by the people who create and make festivals come to life. You will go behind the stage, kitchen, or studio door to hear the stories of passion and inspiration that started some of the world's most beloved festivals. Hear the startup stories and how an idea went from what if to what's next.